Hey
other
guys,
seal,
how are you all?
Wind whistled through the
Today
trees
is
as a young
28th of
shinobi
April
darted
and
from
you
limb
guys
to
are
limb,
doing absolutely
leaping such
amazing.
impossibly long distances
Today
that it
we
felt
will
as
see
though
what
he
if
were
Naruto's
flying.
family abandoned him
He
after
hooped as
sharing
the ground
Kurama's
blurred
power
beneath
with his
him.
siblings.
Nothing could
All
compare
credit
to
goes to the
speed.
author for writing such an
It was
amazing
exhilarating.
story. Link is in the description.
Sunlight briefly illuminated the
So without
shockingly
any
bright
delay,
orange of his
let's
attire,
start the story.
a downright dangerous choice of clothing for a normal shinobi. But that was just it. He was not a normal shinobi. He wore orange to be seen, to be acknowledged by the world. Ribbed for years by his friends for his loudness and general clumsiness, he had finally proven his worth, and the world had seen him. The world had acknowledged him. They called him by name, and they called him a hero. A hero. That was him. That was the new Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto closed his eyes as he reveled in the wind whipping past his cheeks. The fragrant smell of the trees of his homeland assailed his senses, and the anticipation of arriving in Konoha within the hour was enough to have him grinning. Oh, and he knew just what to do the moment he passed through the gates, a visit to Ichiraku's for a steaming bowl of ram. Smack! Naruto crashed solidly into a thick tree limb, and that is how the hero of the shinobi world plummeted to the earth, landing flat on his face in an undignified heap. Moments later, silent footsteps moved toward him, and a dark-haired shinobi glared at his companion. Che, baka. Same as ever. Naruto opened his eyes to see a disdainful sneer spread across the face of his worst enemy, or his best friend, or his eternal rival, or, oh, who cares what we are. Sasuke, he grimaced in pain, don't be such an asswipe. Better than being a baka dobe, replied Uchiha Sasuke, crossing his arms. Damn. That really hurt. Naruto held his head in his hands, waiting for the stinging pain to pass. Kurama, you damn fuzzball. He yelled at the demon fox who resided inside him. Why didn't you warn me? It's your own fault for not paying attention, the Kyuubi said, flashing his teeth in an animalistic grin. Just because they were partners now didn't mean he had to bail his vessel out of everything, especially when the boy was so oblivious. You were thinking about ramen, weren't you? Said his teammate with an exasperated sigh. Figures. Once a dobe, always a dobe. And you're supposed to be team captain. Sasuke shook his head uncomprehendingly. Of course, there was a very good reason that Naruto was the captain of their two-man squad. Naruto was the hero of the Fourth Shinobi War, and Sasuke was a traitor. Ex-traitor, if there was such a thing. After all, it was Sasuke who had turned the tide of the war, breaking Uchiha Madara's control over the Kyuubi and mortally wounding his ancestor. It was Sasuke that freed up Naruto to quell the Jubi. By all rights, he should be recognized as a hero alongside Naruto. Still, no one was able to forget that Sasuke had once betrayed and threatened to destroy Konoha, and he had killed Danzo. That was arguably the strongest case against his return to the village, though his alliance with the snake bastard was high on the list as well. It was Naruto who convinced the council to rescind the order for Sasuke's execution. The truth behind the massacre of the Uchiha clan was revealed, to the shock of every council member but two. I'm not asking you to believe that everything Sasuke did was justified. It sure as hell wasn't. And I'm going to beat the bastard up for leaving us. What I want you to consider is that it was Konoha who betrayed Sasuke first. If I were in his position, if any of us were, well, I really can't blame him. Naruto had argued that Sasuke had proven his loyalty when he saved Naruto's life, thus saving the shinobi world. He had told Naruto that he wouldn't seek revenge, and his word was good enough for the blonde. The council reluctantly yielded under his fierce, blue-eyed persuasion, deciding that it was time to break the cycle of hatred that had so long been an undercurrent of their hidden village. The hardest one to convince was Sasuke himself. While he no longer sought to destroy Konoha, that didn't mean he wanted to live there again, picking up the pieces of his life as though he'd never left. It took a lot of shouting on Naruto's part and scornful silence on Sasuke's for Naruto to make the former Avenger admit that he didn't have plans or a place to go. With his revenge either completed or forsaken, Sasuke was empty of dreams or desires. Naruto could just see him wallowing in a whirlpool of angst and suppressed hatred, slowly being driven mad, and that was not acceptable to the blonde. No, what Sasuke needed was a purpose, a new goal to strive for, and Naruto had the perfect one in mind. With the same doggedness and determination that defined him, Naruto practically dragged his old friend back home. Naruto was soon promoted to Jounin, and after Sasuke had completed the terms of his probation, weekly sessions, with Ibiki, a year of D-ranked missions, and minimal access to his chakra, they had formed a two-man team. Sasuke could now activate the first level of his Sharingan, but the chakra controls that looked like large, black bracelets on his wrists prevented him from activating the Mangekyo. Not that he ever needed it, he was deadly enough even without the Sharingan. The stipulation for Sasuke's freedom that most irked him at first was his watchdog. Naruto. The blonde daube stuck to him like a parasite, trying to break Sasuke's cold composure with constant ribbing and loud antics. When he finally snapped, Sasuke attacked Naruto with a ferocity that surprised even him. But Naruto met him blow for blow, not batting an eye when worried shinobis crowded the training field uncertain if they should intervene. When it was over, the two young men had lain on the ground in mutual exhaustion, sweat pooling on their bodies. "You finally did something about that stick shoved up your ass," Naruto had said, panting but pleased. He had grinned. "If you're angry about the villagers or the council or life in general, don't keep it bottled up like that. Take it out on me when we spar." Ninjutsu and Genjutsu were denied to Sasuke with his chakra cut off, but Taijutsu was fair game. Thus began their daily spars, and before long, Sasuke was looking forward to them just as much as Naruto. He had too many years of anger and hatred weighing him down, and the perpetually optimistic ray of sunshine was the perfect punching bag. Not that he'd stand there and take it, of course. No, Naruto made him work for his hits, and on some level, Sasuke was extremely satisfied to have a challenge. A rival. A friend. Not that he would tell the daube that. The worst part was that he didn't have to. On some subconscious level, the daube understood him like no other. It was infuriating at times, but when Sasuke pushed aside his pride long enough to think objectively, he admitted that Naruto had brought him out of the eternal darkness that was his life. Again, he would never tell the daube that. Huge walls appeared in his field of vision as they neared Konoha. If Sasuke were an ordinary man, he would dread the return to the hidden village with its cold stares and snide comments, but there were very few people that Sasuke gave a damn about, a very select few. In fact, he could count them on one hand. Everyone else could go screw themselves. The duo jumped to the ground and walked through the gates of the Hidden Leaf Village with a quick wave to Kotetsu and Izumo at the guard post. They moved through the now familiar streets of the rebuilt Konoha, villagers calling out to Naruto and coldly ignoring Sasuke. The dark-haired shinobi actually preferred this treatment to the sickly sweet gestures from his childhood. "Oh, Sasuke-kun, back from your mission, are you? Obviously, you dumbass. Sasuke-kun, what a credit you are to the shinobi forces. And how lucky we are that you aren't a shinobi. You're growing up to be such a handsome boy, Sasuke-kun. Hearing that from you, a wrinkly Oba-san, is sickening. Never let it be said that Uchiha Sasuke was affected by the words of ignorant villagers." A loud bark pulled Sasuke from his reverie, and a familiar face with red fang tattoos and a messy mop of brown hair came into view. "Hey, Naruto." "Back from a mission," called Kiba as he ambled down the street towards them, Akamaru by his side. "Yeah, it was a piece of cake." Naruto interlaced his fingers behind his head and grinned broadly. "Yo, Sasuke," said Kiba, almost nervously. Sasuke nodded briefly in response. Kiba turned back to Naruto in apparent relief. "Sakura and Ino were looking everywhere for you. Something about a birthday party?" Naruto's grin broadened. "Yeah, my birthday's next week. 18 years old, Databayo." Kiba smirked, "And not a day over 5, maturity-wise, at least. Sasuke silently agreed, and his mouth threatened to turn upwards as Naruto vehemently exclaimed and flapped around wildly in denial, thus proving Kiba's point. Like you're any better, Kiba, he finally concluded. Humph. Anyways, you better be careful, cause I heard Ino say something about turning your party into a dating game. Like we'll be paired off or something. Not that there's any problem with a good kissing game or two, but if you could convince her to play strip poker instead, the guys would be more willing. Instead of laughing, Naruto glanced at Sasuke. Maybe that's not such a bad idea, he murmured. Sasuke caught the look. What are you up to, Uzumaki? He demanded. Nothing. Absolutely nothing, Naruto said with a laugh before quailing under the Uchiha's glare. Okay, fine. I was thinking that you could, try to mingle with the dash. I'll pass, he said shortly. Arg. Don't be such an antisocial prick, team. The only girl you talk to is Obachan. Your balls have probably shriveled up and died. A long moment passed. I talked to Sakura. Once in a while. Every now and then. When she asked him a direct question. Barely, and only when she asks you a direct question. Damn. He spent way too much time around the dope. Kiba and the rest had become accustomed to Naruto's frequent jabs at the Uchiha, but they had never quite been able to join in. The Uchiha's stone-cold facade dissuaded any attempts to mess with him. Hell, the quickest way to end a conversation was for the Uchiha to walk in the room, and the only way to start it back was to ignore him entirely. Well, just wanted to warn you, said Kiba as he bounded off with a wave. Naruto and Sasuke walked in silence for some time until Naruto, unable to keep quiet, spoke up, Sasuke, speaking of your balls dash. If Sasuke were a more expressive man, he would have facepalmed. You just gotta come to the party, Dadabayo. You can use the time to look over some of Konoha's finest and pick out a Mrs. Uchiha Sasuke. No thanks, he said flatly. Naruto threw up his hands in exasperation. Seriously, team. You say you want to rebuild the clan, but how the hell are you planning to find a wife if you never bother to look? There will be lots of pretty girls at the party and dash. No woman in Konoha suits me, and any of them who would date a man who would have killed them in cold blood just aren't in their right minds. Naruto's thoughts strayed to Sakura and Ino who, despite everything, retained their feelings for the stoic man, and if the coy glances and giggles on the street were anything to go by, Sasuke's handsome features weighed more heavily than his past in the eyes of numerous females of the village. I don't think it would be all that hard to find someone if you took the time to look. A bright idea occurred to him. He nudged his friend. Sasuke, what sort of wife do you want? None of your business, Dobe. The hell it is. As the only person on the planet you actually speak to on a regular basis dash. Not by choice, thought Sasuke dryly. I hereby declare that I, Uzumaki Naruto, am entitled to all rights and privileges as and of pertaining to the business of Uchiha Sasuke, including but not limited to some idea of what type of girl he wants for a wife. Sasuke's only response was to raise his eyebrow. That's Hokage language for, answer the question. I know what you meant. Then answer the damn question. Not a chance. Damn it, Sasuke. Quit acting like some frosty, old Aji-san and tell me what sort of girl you like. Unfortunately, Sasuke had all too much experience with Naruto in one of these moods. When he wanted to know something, Naruto would pester him until he had his answer, and Sasuke, sadly, couldn't use the Mangekyo to silence him. The streets had emptied of civilians as they neared the Hokage Tower, and Sasuke had an idea to throw off Naruto. Ordinarily, he would never dream of doing this, but anything to shut Naruto up was worth price his pride had to pay. With the nimble skill of an S-class shinobi, Sasuke grabbed Naruto by the arm and whipped him sideways into an alley. Taking advantage of Naruto's surprise, he backed the blonde into a wall and leaned over him. Who says, he whispered seductively, I like girls at all. Blue eyes met his dark ones for a long moment. Then you're gay, came Naruto's nonplussed response. What? No running away. No shouts of denial. No screams that Sasuke was threatening his manhood. Okay, said Naruto calmly as Sasuke stood stupefied, then I accept your offer to pay for ramen after we report to Tsunade Obachan. It's a date. He nodded and smiled. Thought Sasuke dumbly. It was supposed to be a joke. Naruto should have screamed and run away by now. Seconds ticked by as Naruto watched Sasuke calmly and Sasuke stared in mute shock, slightly paler than usual. Suddenly, Naruto burst out laughing. Moments later it looked like he was having a fit, he was laughing so hard. A cold feeling swept over Sasuke as a startling realization hit him. You playing me just then, weren't you? Naruto was still laughing, but he nodded his head in the affirmative. How the hell could you tell I was joking? He demanded. It was a rare day that Uzumaki Naruto outsmarted Uchiha Sasuke. It was easy, said Naruto, wiping away tears. You always get this light in your eyes and the right corner of your mouth quirks a little when you're about to make a joke. It is insane that you know that. Sasuke himself didn't know that. He gestured dismissively, you joke so rarely, plus it's so different from your normal frigid look that I learned to recognize it. With a grin, Naruto resumed walking. So, are you going to tell me? Fine, Sasuke snapped as Naruto whooped. Anything to take his mind off the dope Naruto successfully pranking him. I suppose I would want her to be a shinobi. Civilians just don't understand what it is we do. Naruto glowed at Sasuke's use of we, which Sasuke studiously ignored. She would have to be strong in body and spirit to put up with the stigmatism of being my wife. Loyal, kind, intelligent, and Sasuke remembered his mother's bright smile as she welcomed him home from school. Warm and cheerful, even playful, maybe. He looked over to see Naruto gaping. What? He said in irritation and a little embarrassment. I'm just surprised you actually told me, he said with a wide grin. And you were so honest. Don't ask a question if you don't want to hear an answer, snapped Sasuke. Hold it, team. I never said that. I was just surprised. Now I'm over the surprise, and I'm gonna start hunting for a kunoichi for you. Sakura, who seemed to meet every qualification, stayed on top of the mental list of candidates. Do not try to play matchmaker, dope. You'll just embarrass yourself. Hey. You don't know that. I've never tried . And what about you? Sasuke interjected. You're some big shot now, and you don't even have a girlfriend. Didn't Hinata confess to you? Ah. Naruto scratched his head nervously as his excitement quickly deflated. Yeah, 2 years ago. But I like her a lot, and I thought long and hard about it, but, I don't know. I just never . You don't have to explain it. If you didn't feel the same way, then that's it. Naruto was grateful that Sasuke would leave it at that, unlike Sakura who had hounded him for days for a proper answer. Actually, it was Hinata who showed me that I wasn't really in love with Sakura. He glanced over and saw that Sasuke was listening. I mean, it's like her confession showed me what real love is, and I realized that there's this, I don't know, whole other dimension to love. And what I felt for Sakura didn't even compare. A sudden idea occurred to Naruto. That maybe Sasuke did have feelings for a certain kunoichi but stayed silent out of loyalty to him. Following that train of thought, he continued, so, if you want to consider Sakura as a candidate for . I'm not interested in her. His tone was decisive and unyielding. Naruto sputtered, why ? That was when it happened. A sharp jolt of pain racked Naruto's body. He gasped and doubled over, clutching his middle. And Naruto. Alarmed, Sasuke grabbed the blonde before he keeled over. What's wrong? His normally blank shinobi eyes widened in worry as Naruto's legs crumpled beneath him. Was it some sort of poison? A disease? Sasuke bent to grab Naruto and rush him to the hospital when a hand shot out and gripped him firmly. Give it a minute, Naruto gasped. He lay on the ground with his head between his knees and waited for the pain to slowly recede. A minute later, the throbbing dulled, and the world stopped spinning. Shakily, Naruto straightened to a sitting position on the ground and met the black eyes of the worried Uchiha. What was that? Yelled Sasuke. Nothing, Naruto lied intelligently. Stomach pain, I guess. Stomach pain? Asked Sasuke incredulously. You were on the ground writhing. Heh, he tried to laugh it off as he stood up slowly from the ground. Glad you care, but it's nothing to dash. Has this happened before? Naruto's smile faltered. He scratched at his cheek in a familiar nervous gesture. Has this happened before? Sasuke demanded with a dangerous glint in his eyes. Maybe once or twice. This month, he added unwillingly. Sasuke's eyes narrowed. It had probably happened more than that. Naruto, always more concerned with his friends than with himself, was likely to hide anything that might worry them. Examining him with a critical eye, Sasuke determined that his life was not in immediate danger, though he was glad they were about to see the Hokage. Sasuke shrugged. Whatever. Let's finish this report. Let Naruto think he wasn't concerned, and he wouldn't have a chance to escape the tower before the Hokage caught him. Right-o, yelled Naruto, happy that Sasuke would let it slide. Half an hour later, Naruto had finished detailing their successful capture of a B-rank missing nin spotted in Fire Country whom they had returned to the village of Kyumo. Good work, Tsunade nodded approvingly. Anything else? The Raikage gave us this missive for you. Naruto handed her a sealed scroll. You checked it for traps, she asked with a raised brow. Not that they were expecting any trickery from their ally, but it was protocol. Naruto grinned. Course. The boy is learning. He'll make a fine Hokage someday. Tsunade glanced morosely at the paperwork stacked high on her desk. And that day can't come soon enough. Very good. Take a day of rest and dash. Hokage-sama, interrupted Sasuke. I'm concerned about Naruto. Naruto turned on his teammate furiously. Team, you dash. Tsunade narrowed her eyes suspiciously as Naruto tried to haul Uchiha from the room. What seems to be the problem, Uchiha? Only minutes ago, Naruto was overcome by some sort of pain that left him on the ground whimpering. I was not whimpering. Naruto. It was nothing, Oba-chan. Probably just gas or something. No need to worry your deceptively young, Hokage head dash. Sakura. Tsunade yelled loudly. Her pink-haired apprentice entered the room moments later, taking the scene of her beloved in a headlock in stride. Hi, Tsunade Shosho. What did Naruto do this time? Naruto is experiencing some strange pains. Sakura's eyes appraised him. What's wrong? Nothing, Naruto said dismissively. Just a little stomach cramp. Sasuke freed himself from Naruto's grip with a sharp elbow to his side. He was also holding his head, and when he stood up, his knees shook as though he might fall again. How widespread was the pain, Naruto? Tsunade demanded. The blonde sighed, knowing he was trapped. It was pretty much all over my body down to my fingertips and toes. Sasuke spoke up, has it been getting worse? No. It's dash, Naruto cut off abruptly when Tsunade's eyes widened. He shot Sasuke a look that could kill. This has happened more than once, the Hokage yelled. Just once or twice, Naruto muttered between his teeth. Sakura waved her hand in front of her nose. Don't worry, Sasuke, Tsunade Shosho. If it's Naruto, it's probably just gas. Ah, very extensive gas, she said lightly, but her mind was already cataloguing Naruto's physical state. Constricted pupils, heightened breathing, slight sheen of sweat, all signs of nervousness, but nothing irregular. He looked to be in perfectly good health, but for Sasuke to break his stoic demeanor and speak up, he must be worried. "Sakura," ordered Tsunade, "take Naruto to the hospital and do a full triage. Get a blood sample and cheek swab for analysis. He can go home afterwards." "Hi, Shursho. Naruto, I'm banning you from missions for the next week, pending the results of your tests. If you have another pain, call for Sakura, Shizun, or myself immediately." Tsunade stood and walked over to him. Once a scrawny little runt, Naruto was now taller than her by more than an inch. The Hokage lifted her hand, and Naruto winced, expecting to be punched. But she rested it gently against his cheek. "Keep in mind, brat, that to be Hokage you have to use your head first. If you had collapsed while fighting the missing Nin, you might not have made it home alive." She lightly slapped his cheek and turned to the former Avenger. "Good work, Sasuke. A knucklehead like this needs his friends to keep him from doing something stupid." Sasuke dipped his head, his mask of indifference back in place. "Hi, Hokage-sama. Maybe I can cut him some slack," thought Tsunade. He genuinely cares about Naruto, and it's hardly his fault that his life was fucked over by Danzo and Itachi. "I won't bother assigning an ANBU to watch you this week. Instead I expect you to check up on Naruto regularly, and for goodness sake, make him eat something other than ramen." Sasuke kept his features expressionless and nodded in acquiescence. After the trio disappeared from the Hokage's office, Tsunade turned her attention to the missive, secure in the knowledge that Naruto was in good hands. She broke the seal and deciphered the rakish scrawl. By the second line, Tsunade's eyes had narrowed. By the third, her brow creased, forming an anxious line. By the fourth, her teeth were clenched in anger. By the last line, a trail of blood streamed down her chin from where she had bitten her lip. In a fit of rage, the Godame slammed her fist on the desk, shattering the dark wood irreparably. In forest far from Konoha, Mitarashi Anko rubbed the familiar spot on her neck, just at the bend where it met her shoulder. The cursed seal had been sore more often as of late. No need to bother Hokage-sama with this, she thought uncertainly. It doesn't mean he's alive. She hoped she was right. That afternoon Naruto ditched Sakura saying he was going to take a nap when he really headed up to the Konoha archives burrowed in the mountain. He made his way to the back corner where three blonde figures in orange jumpsuits pored over scrolls and files. "Hey, boss," a clone said as Naruto approached them. "Hey, guys, what have you found?" Instead of waiting for an answer, Naruto dispelled the Kage Bunshin technique. Days of information flooded his mind, and he winced as another headache formed. He hated doing that. It was different from using the clones to train. In training, they all did the same basic thing, so Naruto's mind only had to process hundreds of repetitions, things he was already familiar with. This time, however, his clones were studying and analyzing piles of information from numerous scrolls, and releasing the technique meant that Naruto learned in a moment the compilation of hours and hours of study by three shadow clones. That's part of the reason why it's a kinjutsu, he reminded himself as his headache faded. After he had assimilated the new data, he learned a considerable amount that ordinarily would have made him beam with pride, but the pervading realization made him sigh. He still didn't have an answer. "Come on, Kurama. What are we missing?" "I don't know, Gaki. I can't find anything wrong. There's nothing for me to heal, and there's no distortion to my chakra that would be causing this." Naruto raked his hand through his hair in frustration. At this rate, he might have to tell Obachan that there was something wrong with the seal. 2 days later, Sasuke perched on a tree limb as Naruto lay beneath it, babbling incessantly. "So Shikamaru might have been onto something with this cloud-watching thing, and since I've been ordered not to train," he said accusingly, "this is a good time to develop my cloud-watching abilities." That giant fluffy one looks like a trunkless elephant. That thin swirly one looks like a snake. Hey! Maybe it's the snake bastard come to take you back. I might even let you go without a fight this time. Probably would. And that one is like a face with two pigtail buns like Ten. Nah, Sasuke, Naruto sat up with sudden interest. What do you think of Ten as your future wife? She's smart and nice and good with weapons. I don't know her all that well but dash. She likes Neji, Sasuke grunted disinterestedly. Huh? How do you know? It's obvious to anyone with a brain, dope. Closing his eyes, Sasuke leaned back and rested his head against the tree trunk. This is why you could never be a matchmaker. You miss all the cues. Cues? What sort of cues? Sasuke snorted. Always terrifyingly blunt, the blonde was completely clueless when it came to subtle hints and gestures. Naruto frowned at Sasuke's silence, then with two quick jumps landed on a limb near Sasuke. What sort of cues? He repeated. Silence met his question. Glancing around, Naruto spotted a long, thin branch covered in leaves conveniently located above Sasuke's head. With a grin and a quick twist of his wrist, Naruto smashed the leafy end into Sasuke's face. Oi! Sasuke spluttered, jerked from his restful pose. What it like to really like someone, Sasuke? Naruto asked seriously, letting go of the branch. Che, you should be asking a girl this, he scoffed. Well, I'm not. I'm asking you. It's not like I know much more than you. Seeing that Naruto was not to be dissuaded, he took a deep breath. Easier to just get it over with. Fine. You act a little different around the person you like, Sasuke began. You might be friendly with everyone, but with that one person, you open up a little more. His tone grew thoughtful. In their presence you laugh more, smile more. When you talk to them, you really want to hear what they say. Your eyes can't help but glance their way, and when you know that they feel the same, there's this quiet contentment resting beneath the surface. Sasuke, said Naruto in amazement, you're quite the romantic, you know. It's hard to believe you've never had a crush. I'm not speaking from experience. That's just what I've heard. And what he had seen with his own parents. His father, Fugaku, was a hard man by all accounts with little warmth for even his family, but when Sasuke's mother would slip her hand in her husband's larger one, his stern features would soften into something akin to a smile. But I still don't see what's wrong with Sakura or Ino, complained Naruto. It's not that there's a problem with them. It's just that, hell. Truth is, they annoyed me to death when we were kids. They were always giggling and shrieking and staring at me, and it lasted for years. They stalked me. Literally. In the academy, they sat behind me and pulled my hair. Rabid fangirls is a very apropos description of them. Apropos what? Sasuke rolled his eyes. It's a fitting description. The thing is, he continued, they never knew a thing about me. Didn't then. Don't now. To them, I was just the good-looking, mysterious survivor of the Uchiha massacre. Take away that, and they wouldn't have given me the time of day. Even now, they don't know anything about me. But in their defense, you don't exactly go out of your way to express what you're feeling. Sakura's an amazing shinobi, Naruto continued. Sure, she's scary as hell when she's mad, but you should see her in the hospital. She's so in control and intelligent and efficient, totally in her element, Databeo. And she's matured and all from her rabid fangirl days. I have great respect for Sakura as a medic and former team member. But Naruto prompted. Sasuke's expression darkened considerably. After we defeated Madara and the Jubi, Sakura was the first one to reach us. You were lying there blood-soaked and unconscious, and she came to me. To heal me. He clenched his fists almost subconsciously, his nails digging into his palms. You were with her all along, encouraging and protecting her. Not only had I threatened to kill her, I actually tried to. Twice. And still she treated me before you. Even half dead with chakra exhaustion, I remember being disgusted with her. You could have been dying for all she knew. Naruto closed his eyes as he digested the information. He hadn't known that. Sorry, muttered Sasuke guiltily. Nah, I always knew she would go to you. That's what I would have wanted her to do. Baka. That's okay with me, he grinned as Sasuke shook his head. So that's why you're so distant with her. Naruto mused. Sasuke had a complicated system of honor, after all. Sure, he had tried to kill Naruto himself, but he had done so openly, upfront and clear about his intentions. He had broken their bond, or tried to, and only attacked after each knew where the other stood. Sakura, on the other hand, had passed over her teammate for a man who had tried to kill her. She had, in a sense, betrayed her friend for an enemy, and Naruto could have died by her neglect. Sasuke shrugged. I guess I don't want her to know me. As for all the other girls dash. No, that I get, Naruto interrupted. I really do. After I defeated Nagato, everyone was so eager to talk to me and this one guy wanted my autograph, like the last 16 years of my life never happened. When we got back from the war, lots of girls were hanging around me asking me questions and smiling a lot. It was so weird, wrong even. It makes you wonder just who your real friends are. Sasuke smirked. Don't think too much, Uzumaki. It's not like you. Racked with frustration, Naruto threw whatever papers he was holding into the air. They glided to the floor in disorganized clumps, and Naruto knew he would regret doing that when he had to pick them up. I know I've seen this symbol or something like it. He yanked his hair as though that would help him pull out a discarded memory. Etched into a corner of his seal, the symbol in question was a thick line boxed in by 4 whirlpools forming a diamond shape. Days before, Naruto had identified the symbol as an addition to the 8 trigram seal. The 8 trigrams that the Yondaime created broke at the Waterfall of Truth, Naruto, Kurama had said. If this symbol were a part of it, it would have disappeared too. Yeah. Naruto had scratched his head in confusion. That means that this weird seal probably has nothing to do with you. My dad used your seal to disguise this one. But what's it for? The following day, Naruto had discovered something else. He had poked Kurama awake in his excitement. It's doing something with my chakra. He had exclaimed. It's such a minuscule amount that I never noticed, but the seal is feeding on a constant stream of my chakra. For what purpose? Naruto had deflated. Don't know yet. 2 days after his last discovery, Naruto pounded his head on the table in misery. He couldn't find the symbol anywhere, in any scroll in the whole damn archive. Maybe it was an original seal by your mom or dad, and they never archived it, suggested Kurama. Yeah, except this line. Naruto jabbed his stomach where the symbol was outlined, looks so damn familiar. It's just a line like any other, the Kyuubi said in annoyance. The Bijus, especially a certain demon fox, were not known for their patience. It's a thick line, Naruto contradicted, and the edges are sort of rounded. It's not the sort of line you see in normal script, and I just know. He was cut short as a seizing pain gripped his body. The now familiar attacks took their toll. It was awful, as though every muscle and bone in his body were screaming madly. Being ripped to pieces. Agonizing minutes passed as Naruto stuffed his fist in his mouth to stifle the moans that threatened to escape his lips. As always, the pain dwindled to a dull ache, and the attack stopped as quickly as it started. The attacks are coming more often, noted Kurama quietly. And lasting longer. I know. You don't have to do everything alone, Naruto. Tell your friends. They might know something. I'm not doing this alone. I've got you, right? Kurama snorted, a little pleased despite himself. Sure, an immortal demon who never had more than a passing knowledge about seals. Kushina was careful to block me out when she did seal work. She was afraid I might find a way to break myself out. Could you really have done that? I thought it was impossible. If she was worried about it, then it must have at least been plausible in theory. Naruto thought long and hard. Well, I don't know much about my mom's seal specifically, but if you were able to find its keystone, that's the point that essentially holds the entire seal together, you could possibly disrupt it by forming a secondary seal over it. With the momentary weakening of the primary seal, if you concentrated as much chakra as possible on that point, you might have been able to break free. Kurama looked at him appraisingly. You know, Gaki, I never thought I'd say this, but you have real talent with seals. You're a natural. Blushing with pride, Naruto scratched his chin. Ah, well, the Uzumaki clan was renowned for this stuff. Everyone talks about the yondaime as though he were incredible with seals, and he was, but really it was my mom that was the seal master. And everyone says I'm just like her, he grinned. Heh, you shouldn't be telling me this, though. I might have to test it out with your seal. It was a credit to Kurama and Naruto's relationship that the former was jesting and the latter knew it. Instead of laughing, however, Naruto stared at the fox. Actually, I want you to know this, just in case. Just in case what? Well, he said awkwardly, if this weird seal messes me up or I'm ever wounded beyond repair in a fight or something, he leveled Kurama with a serious look, I want you to break free. Naruto. There's no need for you to die along with me, if it comes to that. The Kyuubi looked for a long moment at his vessel, his eyes softening imperceptibly. You really are a crazy shinobi, Naruto. After a long moment, Naruto grinned, dispelling the tension in the air. Speaking of which, Kurama, I think I might have found a way to give you some freedom without killing me. If you want it, that is. Red eyes with slitted pupils widened in surprise. Worry about that later, he finally said. Figure out this seal for now. Naruto met Sasuke in training field E for their daily spar. They still mostly fought with taijutsu, but with Sasuke's increased chakra allowance, they added a bit of ninjutsu as well. You should go into sage mode so you actually stand a chance, Dobe, said Sasuke as he stretched. As if, team. Without your Mangekyo, sage mode would dash. Naruto stopped. Could it be? Surely not. But. Sage mode, he whispered. It can't be, but, it's sage mode. It's sage mode. It's gotta be. Sasuke, I love you. In jubilation, Naruto ignored the bewildered Uchiha and bit his thumb. Kuchiyos no jutsu, he yelled. One poof later, a large, white cloud dispelled, revealing an enormous, orange toad with blue markings and wearing a vest. Yo, Naruto. What's up? Asked the toad when he determined that there were no enemies in sight. Gamakichi, can you do a reverse summons? I need to speak to Gramps. Gamakichi eyed the hyperactive shinobi in confusion. Yeah. I'll be going then. Moments later, Naruto disappeared into thin air, leaving a stupefied Uchiha in his wake. Naruto lay on the ground, shirtless, as a small green toad with white hair around the ears poked and prodded his stomach. With the sage mode hint, Naruto had realized that the thick line, rounded at the edges, looked exactly like the pupils of his eyes when he entered sage mode. You're right, Naruto boy, said Fukasaku in his froggy voice. This seal is taking in natural energy and mixing it with your chakra. Naruto sighed in relief. He was finally getting somewhere. Did my dad ever mention a seal like this, geezer sage? The small toad shook his head. Neither did Jiraiya boy. Any idea what it's for? It's hard to say, Naruto boy. The seal is taking the natural energy and pulling it into your body, so I can't follow the thread. I would have guessed that it was used as reinforcement for the 8 trigram seal, but since that's gone and it's still funneling chakra, he trailed off and looked at Naruto critically. As you know, natural energy has a wide range of uses, including advanced sensory techniques, physical enhancement, and transformation among others. Naruto scratched his head. Sure, but I've never been different from other shinobi, except for having the kyubi sealed in me. I don't have any unusual things about me. I just don't get why I'm only finding this out now. If it's been sucking my chakra for my entire life dash. It's possible to become so accustomed to stimuli that your brain doesn't bring them to your attention anymore. In your case, you've had this seal since you were an infant, and only when you focused intently on it did your conscious mind recognize the chakra stream. I'm not sure what it's actually doing, but at least we can conclude that it is indeed Minato Boy's work. How can you tell for sure? Naruto had harbored doubts that it was his father's doing it all. The snake bastard had once messed with his seal, and for all he knew, Orochimaru could have added a parting gift. These whirlpools, stated the geezer sage. They were Minato Boy's signature. Well, they were Kushina girl's first, but your father picked it up. Comforting to know the seal hasn't been harming you all these years, eh? Sure, until it started causing debilitating attacks, Naruto muttered darkly. Debilitating is a long word, Naruto, said Gamakichi. Where'd you learn it? Fukasaku continued as though his descendant had not spoken. Yes, that's the strange thing. Makes me think that the seal is expiring. It's weakening. I believe so, and that could be the cause of your attacks. For almost 18 years the seal has been doing something to your body. The pains may be withdrawal symptoms. Then can I just remove it? Fuzzball wouldn't let me. The demon fox forcibly switched out with Naruto and spoke to the toad. I thought it foolish to remove the seal without knowing its purpose. The kyubi makes a good point, said Fukasaku as Naruto's red eyes turned back to blue. Even now, it's better to let the seal take its natural course rather than risk the unknown effects of its removal. Naruto shot the toad a sour look. Geezer Sage wasn't the one who had to endure the frequent attacks and hide from his friends at the same time. He was about to retort when a huge toad leaped into his field of vision. Yo, Naruto, said Gamabunta in his gruff voice, pipe sticking out of his mouth. The ground shook when he landed. Your birthday is 2 days from now. It's almost time for you to fulfill our contract and drink with me. Right, boss. Can you summon me that night? Don't you have a party to be at? That's not till this weekend when everyone's back from their missions. Good. Expect it around dusk then. Naruto nodded and surveyed the 3 toads. 3 friends who'd stuck with him through thick and thin. Thanks, Geezer Sage. I'm off. So the seal had a time limit. Naruto just had to put up with the attacks until then, and he had a feeling he knew when that was. It was a logical conclusion anyways. You should tell someone. Now that we're pretty sure you won't come to harm, there's no reason to hide what you've discovered. Yeah, there is, Naruto argued. We still aren't sure what's going to happen, and it might be something I don't want anyone to know. And what if? What if what? A dreamy look crossed Naruto's face. What if my parents put a bit of their chakra into this seal like with the 8 trigrams? I don't know where my chakra and the natural energy come into play, but, what if I get to see my parents on my 18th birthday? Kurama spoke hesitantly. Then why wouldn't your parents have mentioned it when they saw you before? To surprise me, Naruto snapped. A moment later he sighed remorsefully, sorry, fuzzball. Humph. Next time you apologize, don't add an insult. Then lose the fur. Sheer dumb luck and a very durable shadow clone kept the truth behind the attacks hidden from Naruto's vigilant friends that week. Sakura had taken to dropping by whenever she had a spare minute, checking his blood pressure, temperature, and even his reflexes every time she visited. Naruto's knee might have been permanently bruised from excessive reflex tests if Kurama hadn't been healing him. Kiba, Niji, and particularly Lee had been popping up out of the blue whenever the fancy took them, the latter yelling about the youthfulness of watching over his friends, and Hinata, more assertive once she'd given up on Naruto, had cornered him in Ichiraku's. Naruto was glad that Shikamaru, Ino, and Choji were on a mission. The genius might have read the truth in Naruto's guilty features. Sasuke was the hardest to avoid, but the only close call occurred when Naruto was in the bathroom. The pain hit him just as Sasuke jumped through his bedroom window, and Naruto was able to turn on the shower in time to keep Sasuke from becoming suspicious and demanding that he open the door. Their spars were the trickiest matter, but Naruto had the perfect chance to test out his newest technique, permanent shadow clones. They weren't really permanent, of course, but Naruto had discovered that if he ramped up the chakra in the clone and transferred a bit of his own blood to it, then the shadow clone wouldn't poof out of existence from a single blow. The more blood Naruto gave it, the more durable the shadow clone became. The drawback was that he could only make 2 at a time without threatening his own blood supply. The best part was that, for whatever reason, the clones didn't suffer from the attacks. So in his last 2 spars with Sasuke, Naruto had sent a blood clone who fought a defensive match, never giving Sasuke a proper hit and never putting itself in a vulnerable position. Thus passed the days before his birthday. Now it was 11:43 p.m. on October 9th, and Naruto sat with tense expectation in front of his digital clock, watching each minute tick by. His new apartment was much nicer than the one from his childhood, which was destroyed along with the rest of Konoha in Pain's attack, and Naruto kept it cleaner than he had his old one. With nicer furniture and walls that weren't rotting, he was more inclined to take out the trash and straighten his things. Several of his friends lived the complex as well, including the Uchiha Bast. As though summoned by a thought, Sasuke appeared at his window. "Dobe, I saw your light on. Cursed the entire Uchiha clan. You were acting strange at our spar earlier, and I've concluded that you're actually worried about these attacks. Have you had any more?" he demanded. Naruto peeked at the clock out of the corner of his eye. 11:46. He had 14 minutes to get the bloody team out the bloody door. Naruto chuckled weakly, "Course not, team. I'm just fit as a fiddle, hunky-dory, just fine in other words." Sasuke raised a brow. "You're acting even stranger now." "Just, excited about my birthday." Sasuke watched him speculatively. 11:49. "So yeah," exclaimed Naruto. "There's no reason for you to lose sleep worrying about me. So why don't you just head back to your dash?" "I'm not tired." Curses on all the future Sasuke babies. 11:50. "Sasuke," said Uchiha, jerked at the sudden shout. "I lent you my manga. You irresponsible team. You weren't going to return it, were you? How dare you dash? I didn't borrow your manga, baka. I don't read manga." "Well, aren't you just some, perfect, little, stuck-up, goody two-shoes shinobi?" "Naruto, what is wrong with you?" Nothing. I'm just peeved that my room's been invaded by some bloody team that can't take a hint. The only way I can get you out of mine is by threatening to destroy your ramen stores." 11:53. Gah. Why had the team chosen this night to be all concerned and curious? Why do you keep glancing at the clock, Dobe? And why are you sweating? With a shout, Naruto pounced on Sasuke, intending to tie him up and throw him out the door. But whether it was his nerves or some other factor, Naruto executed the attack sloppily, and Sasuke, eyes widening in surprise, countered. Sasuke slammed Naruto's face into the floor, twisting his arms behind his back, effectively pinning him. What the hell? When all else fails, hit M with the truth. Alright, already. There's this other seal dash, Naruto babbled furiously. He wasn't even certain of what he was saying, but Sasuke released him long enough to listen. Naruto poked at his stomach a few times and pointed at the clock desperately, yammering something about midnight and birthday. 11:58. Let me get this straight. The Yondaime put another seal on you. It uses natural energy and your chakra. You don't know what it's for, but it's weakening as we speak. You also don't know what will happen once it breaks dash. It was really quite amazing that the Uchiha had managed to translate so well. 11:59. And you didn't tell anyone? Are you insane? Sasuke was furious. Naruto clenched his eyes shut to tune out the irritating Uchiha, almost feeling the last minute slip past as though it were tangible. A long moment passed as Sasuke watched on anxiously, unsure of what he should do. A very long moment passed, and Naruto frowned. He waited some more. Finally, Naruto lost his patience and squinted his eyes to look at the clock. 12:01. Maybe it would take a minute for the seal's removal to be effective. 12:02. Okay, maybe it would take 3 minutes to be effective. 12:03. Naruto slumped miserably. Kami, what a letdown. I was so sure. I think your clock's fast, Dobe, said Sasuke. Naruto spun to him in surprise. No sooner had bright blue eyes met black ones than a flash of terrible pain tore through Naruto's body. His back arched violently as he cried out. His entire body throbbed in agony. This was no ordinary attack, it was like the sum of every other one. His blood pulsed, and nerves spiked with intolerable pain. Naruto! Hang on! I've got to get you to the hospital, yelled Sasuke. Naruto's body abruptly relaxed. He fell unconscious from the pain. In fear and desperation, Sasuke's hands shot towards the blonde to whisk him away to the hospital, but suddenly, his hands stopped. His fear-filled eyes widened even further. Something was happening to Naruto. Something that stopped Sasuke in his tracks. Naruto's hair was lengthening. The golden locks that once formed his spiky hairstyle now extended down past his shoulders, past his waist, down his lower back. Naruto's hands were covering his face, still clenched as though frozen, and his fingers, changed. They were slender, softer, more feminine. Sasuke's eyes darted down Naruto's body, his shinobi mind cataloging each and every alteration. Naruto's feet disappeared from view as though they were sucked into his bright orange pants. Sasuke paused for a long moment at a curious bulge on Naruto's chest. Stymied, even panicked, Sasuke jerked away from the unconscious person in all-consuming alarm. His breath came in short gasps as he struggled to simultaneously accept and reject what his eyes told him was happening. As suddenly as the metamorphosis began, it stopped, and Sasuke was left staring at the transformed body of his best friend. In growing trepidation, he hesitantly reached out and pulled Naruto's hand away from his face. Naruto's once oval face was now, heart-shaped. His nose was smaller, his cheekbones higher, his brows thinner. Sasuke's gaze rested for a long moment on a pair of full lips. More plump than Naruto's thin ones and decidedly, girly. The only feature that remained the same were the thin scars on both cheeks, giving the appearance of whiskers. If not for that and for the fact that Sasuke had witnessed the transformation himself, he never would have known it was the same blonde dope. This had to be a prank. One of Naruto's insane jokes, and he had taken it too far this time. Sasuke activated his Sharingan. Damn, it wasn't Genjutsu. It wasn't a henge. It was freaking impossible. There lay Uzumaki Naruto. He was the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. Hero of the shinobi world. Honored sage. And somehow, impossibly, he was a girl. Next chapter. The mirror's reflection. Sasuke stared, immobile in shock. Dumbly, some corner of his brain told him to make sure Naruto was still alive. He reached out a trembling hand and put it to Naruto's pulse, hesitantly, as though unsure if he should touch him, or her. Sasuke sighed in relief when he felt a pulse throbbing under his finger. Naruto's sides moved as he she breathed in deeply. Sasuke, Naruto moaned. Even his, no, her, voice sounded different. It was higher pitched and somehow softer, more like a girl's. Sasuke, damn it, she called in a muddled tone. Naruto, he said shakily. Are you okay? Can you hear me? Open your eyes if you can hear me. The blonde moaned again and tried to obey. Brilliant blue eyes like shining sapphires blinked wearily up at the dark, blurry figure leaning over her. Sasuke. I feel weird. What happened? You freaking just turned into a girl. That's what happened. He wanted to scream. You, collapsed. I should get you to a hospital. Maybe. How could he explain this to the medic on call? Sleepy, Naruto mumbled, closing her eyes again. Maybe you should just rest for now, Sasuke suggested with false calm. Sleep it off, and we'll go see Sakura in the morning. Not here, you dope. Sasuke shouted inwardly, but the blonde had already begun to snore where she lay on the hardwood floor in the living room of her apartment. Her head was turned at an odd angle, and her hip was digging into the floor. It couldn't be a comfortable position. Sasuke hesitantly poked her in the shoulder with his finger. Oi, Naruto. Wake up, and get in bed. Oi. Her snores continued uninterrupted. Sasuke looked at her uncertainly, the obvious solution glaring him in the face, however reluctant he was to do it. Sighing darkly, he leaned towards her, and with nimble fingers, he gathered the blonde in his arms and carried her towards her room. She was surprisingly light, her body soft in ways a boy's could never be. Almost fragile. Sasuke could have laughed had the situation been different. Naruto, fragile? Never. He dropped the girl unceremoniously onto her bed. It wasn't much as far as revenge went, but she deserved the 3-foot drop for the fright she'd given him. Fright, he realized suddenly. He had actually been afraid. Sasuke hadn't felt fear since the war, when Madara almost succeeded in ripping the Kyuubi out of Naruto. Damn it, he thought anxiously, stupid dope. This was the bond that he had tried so hard to break. This bond caused him to care about an idiot and to fear when the idiot was in danger. But fear was weakness, and weakness had to be destroyed. That was what he had believed. Naruto slept on, unperturbed by Sasuke's turmoil. A contented noise sounded from deep within her throat as she snuggled into her blankets. Sasuke stared at the girl for another long moment before he pulled the covers up to her chin. Moonlight fell across the blonde, illuminating the feminine features of the still familiar face, and Sasuke knew he wouldn't get a wink of sleep that night. The following morning. Naruto opened her eyes wearily, still partly inside her dream, a strange dream, it was. Her body had screamed in pain as she convulsed. Sharingan eyes had widened in panic, as if the Uchiha team even knew what panic was. Naruto sat up slowly, rubbing the sleepiness from her eyes as the last vestiges of her dream faded from her mind. She pushed the covers off her body. The first thing she noticed was that she was still wearing her orange shinobi suit. Odd. She preferred to sleep in her frog pajamas. The second thing she realized was that she couldn't remember how she had gotten in bed the night before. As she reached up to scratch her chin, a third peculiarity intruded upon her notice. The sleeves of her jacket, they were, well, floppy. They had loosened considerably as though they'd been stretched, and her hands were buried somewhere inside of them. In sleepy confusion, she pulled back the sleeves. When did my clothes get so big? Naruto mumbled. This was the same outfit she'd worn the day before, right? Her hand didn't make it up to her chin. Instead, her arm hit something along the way, something soft and bouncy. Naruto turned her face downwards to stare at a peculiar swelling on her chest. There were 2 of them. Cupping the bulges in her hands, Naruto looked at them in fearful amazement. She pressed them and felt where her fingers touched. In growing alarm, she squeezed them as hard as she could, digging her fingernails in. Yow, she yelped as the unfamiliar pain made her twist in surprise. A moment later, Naruto's head hit the floor with a resounding thud. The shout and thud alerted a nearby shinobi who burst into the bedroom without knocking. Sasuke gazed for a long moment at the blonde and orange conundrum. Naruto's head had solidly smacked the floor while her lower half remained on the bed. The orange jacket was slipping downward to reveal a very slender, white stomach. Sasuke averted his gaze. Normally, Naruto would wonder what the hell the team was doing in her room, but at the moment, there were more pressing matters at hand. More specifically, in her hands. Sasuke. Naruto looked at the upside-down Avenger in confusion, not bothering to change her position. What's going on? What are these? She asked, indicating the lumps of flesh in her hands. Was it her imagination or did the Uchiha's cheeks turn a curious shade of pink? And Naruto, Sasuke forced himself to say, you might want to go look at yourself in a mirror. Huh? Just go look in a mirror, he shouted as he edged back into the living room. Jeez. Okay. Naruto righted herself and stood up from the floor. She eyed the Uchiha in confusion as she walked past him. Had he gotten taller? No way. She was still half asleep, and from the looks of it, Sasuke should still be asleep, too. His eyes were red but not from the Sharingan. No, they were bloodshot, as though he had gotten no sleep that night. Maybe that explained his peculiar behavior, but it didn't explain the strange things on her chest. Nor why she couldn't walk without tripping over her unusually long pants. Naruto pushed open the bathroom door and trudged in. She stood in front of the mirror and blinked as her reflection came into focus. Blue eyes stared back at her, and whisker marks lined her cheeks. But somehow, everything else appeared curiously off. There was a long pause. G, she shrieked, backpedaling into the wall. Her hands brushed against something soft. Something that wasn't supposed to be there. Gripping the long golden strands of what was certainly not her hair, Naruto yanked and cried out. No good, the stuff was actually attached to her scalp. Flashing wildly, her eyes encountered the same reflection in the mirror. In a frenzy of confusion, Naruto brought her hands together to dispel the Oiroke no Jutsu that she didn't remember casting, but the girl in the mirror remained the same. She tried again. And again. Her mind raced for an answer, but coming up empty, Naruto turned to the one other living being in her apartment for an explanation. She moved so fast, Sasuke would have thought she had learned the Hiraishin no Jutsu, and she grasped him by the green Chunin vest he wore, slamming him against a wall of her living room. What happened to me? She yelled, shaking Sasuke madly. Why do I look like a girl? The seal, he choked, wanting to pull away from the girl but wary of touching her. It had to be Dash. The seal, repeated Naruto, her eyes going wide. It wasn't possible. It just wasn't possible. She looked into Sasuke's bloodshot eyes, begging for him to say it was all a joke, but he had never been one for practical jokes. The seal used natural energy. Natural energy could be used for transformation. Today was October 10th. Her birthday. The day the seal expired. Sasuke pulled his head back, putting as much space between his face and the girl's as possible. Don't get so close to me, he warned. I have turned into a girl, and you're worried about a little proximity? I'm just a bit. Disturbed, Sasuke said. He had lain awake all night on the couch restless but half convinced that he was actually dreaming. Seeing blue-eyed blonde very much awake in this animated girl body had thrown him. From the girl's reaction, she truly was Naruto, which meant that Sasuke's best friend, hell, his only friend, was in fact a girl. It was no trick, no prank, and Sasuke didn't know how to react. You think you're the only one? Sasuke, I have boobs. Do you know what they feel like? They're heavy, floppy, and they're just, there. In the way. It's insane. I mean, look Dash, Naruto proceeded to grab her shirt and yank it up. Damn it. Pull your shirt down. Sasuke's hand darted almost instinctively and grasped Naruto's orange jacket before she could lift it over her head. Sasuke, are you blushing? Of course not. Then let go of my jacket so I can figure out what's going on. Naruto proceeded to fling Sasuke's arm away and rip the jacket off. Her black undershirt was tight in new places and strangely loose in others. Blue eyes widened and pupils constricted to pinpoints as they focused on the now well-defined shape of Naruto's chest. Oh, God! It's true! Naruto reached for the black shirt. She had to know. She had to see. She wouldn't believe it until... No. Sasuke's hand shot forth again, unwilling to let the blonde to strip further. As the two shinobi struggled, neither noticed that the door to Naruto's apartment had opened until a young man cleared his throat uncomfortably. Ah, excuse me. Wrong apartment, he mumbled in embarrassment. Nara Shikamaru had bad luck. When he had returned from his mission the night before, Sakura had been waiting at his apartment, which was odd enough on its own. Then the pink-haired Kunoichi proceeded to order him to check on Naruto, who was having strange attacks. He was a genius at putting clues together, she said, so maybe he could figure out what Naruto was hiding. Shikamaru had put her off, saying that it was late and he was tired, but he could not rest easily that night. Troublesome, he had thought to himself as he rolled over in bed. It would be just like Naruto to hide something from his friends rather than worry them. So the reluctantly concerned Nara made his way to Naruto's to observe the blonde and possibly deduce the truth behind the mysterious attacks. Clearly Shikamaru had been too absent-minded when he walked toward Naruto's apartment. Though why his feet had taken him to the Uchiha's room was beyond even him, but there was Uchiha Sasuke trying to rip the shirt off a girl. So not what Shikamaru wanted to see in the morning. Or ever. The strangest thing was that the girl had a familiar shade of blonde hair and startling blue eyes. All in all, she looked very similar to Naruto in his Oiroku no Jutsu, right down to whisker marks on her cheeks. Smaller and prettier than the usual Oiroku Naruto, but too similar to be mere coincidence. Another quick glance around the room told Shikamaru that he was indeed in Naruto's apartment, and that the two people looking at him in surprise were indeed Uchiha Sasuke and Uzumaki Naruto. Either the two boys had developed a rather kinky relationship or something else was going on. Whatever the case, Shikamaru did not want to know. This is what you get for trying to check on a friend. Troublesome. These conclusions were drawn in a fraction of a second, and Shikamaru turned hurriedly on his heel and strode out the door. Ah! Grab him, Sasuke. A hand on his shoulder gripped Shikamaru firmly and pulled him back into the room. Look, said Shikamaru, waving his hands in front of him, it's none of my business what you two do. In fact, I'd prefer never to dash. You did not just see what you think you saw, snarled Sasuke. Right, I definitely did not see you try to rip Naruto's shirt off his female body. I swear I won't tell Dash. Naruto flung herself past the two boys to slam the front door shut. Don't say that so loudly. People might hear you. Shikamaru muttered that he wasn't the one yelling. He could not sense the henge, but then, Naruto had grown more and more proficient in ninjutsu, so perhaps he was able to hide the use of his chakra. It was a very good henge, realistic down to the ample chest that was far too close to Shikamaru for comfort. Shikamaru. I need you Dash. The genius took in the sight of a henged Naruto and a rather breathless and red-faced Uchiha who were both blocking his exit. I do not do threesomes, he interrupted firmly. He would use his Kagemain no Jutsu to escape if he had to. After a moment of shock, Naruto made a gagging sound, and Sasuke looked rather sick himself. Naruto finally forced her mouth to work. No, Sasuke and I Dash. I really don't want to hear about your relationship with the Yuke Dash. Hell, no. You've got it totally wrong. I just turned into a girl. As was usual, the blonde put too little distance between herself and whomever she was talking to, and Shikamaru's vision was filled with the sight of an indignant young woman with flashing eyes filled with desperation and even a little fear. Despite himself, certain wheels in Shikamaru's head had been turning from the moment he had realized who the blonde was, and at her declaration, his mind had conceived of a number of potential explanations as to why a boy was suddenly a girl. None of them likely but none impossible. He systematically catalogued the rapid breathing, jerky motions, and panicked eyes of the girl. If it were anyone else, Shikamaru might be prepared to accept it, but, this was Naruto, who had never outgrown a little mischief. I'm not in the mood for a dash. It's not a prank. Naruto protested hotly. I really am a girl. See? She grabbed his hand and pressed it to her chest in the blink of an eye. The genius jerked his hand away and stared at the unchanged form before him. A henge was an excellent jutsu for fooling enemies by sight and sound, its weakness lay in touch. Shikamaru's hand should have passed through the ninjutsu, and his own chakra should have distorted the henge. But according to his hand, that had been very real. You should have started explaining with the seal, said Sasuke, whose face had returned to its impassive, unfeeling mask. Inwardly, he was relieved that someone else was just as astonished as he. Right, the seal. Naruto's mouth was in motion, and a rarely expressed corner of Shikamaru's mind twitched in satisfaction as his soundest theory, a seal utilizing natural energy, was proven true. 5 minutes later, he blew out a breath as Naruto finished. Damn, this was troublesome. He frustratedly muttered something about having just gotten back from Suna and not needing this sort of trouble. Naruto piped in excitedly, did you get to see Temari-san? She said the other girl's name in a sing-song voice full of teasing. Shikamaru stared at her for a minute. Damn, he said, rubbing his neck as the last trace of uncertainty fled. You really are Naruto. I thought maybe I died on the mission and awoke in an alternate reality. How troublesome. So you believe me then? Shikamaru sighed and nodded. Yash. So, what am I supposed to do now? Naruto asked the genius, desperate for guidance. I don't think there's anything you can do except to accept that you are a dash. Shikamaru trailed off as Naruto's face fell. Damn. He rubbed his neck, wishing that he were under a tree somewhere, watching the clouds go by. He sighed, Hokage-sama has access to data that no shinobi can see without her permission. Maybe there's some explanation hidden somewhere in those files. But that means I have to tell her dash. Probably so. Somehow it felt like the fewer people knew, the less true her condition would be, but right now, she was desperate to do something to find some sort of possible explanation for the Yondame's madness. Let's get this over with, she mumbled, glancing down at her new body. Her clothes were too large now, but she had kept some from 2 years ago that were a little smaller. Resigned to her fate, Naruto walked towards her bedroom, reaching for her shirt to pull over her. Stop. Naruto turned at Shikamaru's command. Whatever is going on, right now you're a girl, so you can't just strip in front of us because we dash. He motioned to himself and Sasuke, our boys. Even you should know that girls and boys have different bodies. Any color left in Naruto's face drained at an alarming rate. No, she whispered, as though a terrible thought occurred to her. Without further warning, she reached for her pants and jerked them down to her ankles, revealing well-formed, very feminine legs that 2 pairs of male eyes latched onto before catching themselves. Naruto's mind was elsewhere. Her boxers were the same frog pattern as yesterday, but they felt curiously empty. It's gone, she whispered blankly. A dark chuckle emanated from deep within Naruto's mind. You damn fuzzball. Did you know about this? I had no idea. Liar. You saw me before the Yondaime put the seal on me. My mind had just been taken over by Uchiha Madara, who had me destroy half of Konoha, not that I would have objected had I been in control of myself. Afterwards, I was in a murderous rage and was about to be resealed within an scrawny infant. Forgive me for not taking the time to glance between your legs, came the Kyuubi's acridly sarcastic response. Growling, Naruto slammed her bedroom door behind her and tore off her clothes in a raging frenzy. Chapter 3. The most surprising shinobi. Uchihas were never taken by surprise because they were always aware and in control of their surroundings. Uchihas were never in a position of discomfort because they were secure in the knowledge that their bloodline was superior and thus the doings of inferior creatures could have no ill effect on them. Uchihas were never uncertain or confused as to their course of actions because ultimately they would act in the best interest of their clan. Uchiha Sasuke tried to remember these teachings. In fact, he recited them over and over in his head like a mantra to maintain the characteristic calm of his family. However, the fact of the matter was that Sasuke was continually surprised to the point of shock, was distinctly uncomfortable and had been all night, and was so uncertain and confused that he didn't know which way to look. The one place he wanted to avoid looking was the one place to which his eyes were constantly drawn. It was a particular spot slightly ahead of him and to his left, where a mop of sunshine blonde hair bounced with each step. Naruto was in a henge. A henge of himself, of the young man he was a day ago, of the young man she was a day ago. It was a very realistic henge. Not a whisker nor a hair was out of place, and that stupid grin was plastered on her face as usual. It would be so easy to believe that the past 10 hours were nothing but a nightmare. Perhaps that was why Sasuke had begun to fear for his sanity. He didn't understand how that darn Nara had the most unconcerned and disinterested expression, as though he had noted the change, accepted it, and moved on. As though it were no different from learning that your favorite pair of black pants were actually navy blue. Troublesome, but just another piece of information. Truthfully, for Shikamaru, the idea of Naruto being a girl was much less alarming than thinking the two boys wanted him for a threesome. On her part, Naruto was alternating between extreme apprehension and an unyielding hope that someone would come along and tell her that everything was one big joke. So, with conflicting emotions, the trio made its way to Hokage Tower while people called out to Naruto, wishing her a happy birthday. She was now their hero rather than their pariah, so the civilians actually cared about such things. Naruto had a smile and a wave for everyone, and she was careful to hide her anxiety from them. But the pasted smile slipped from her face the moment they passed through the door to the tower. Tsunade's young secretary informed them that the Hokage was busy with paperwork, but she still let them pass, sending a playful wink towards Naruto. Yesterday, Naruto would have grinned widely and bragged to his friends about being popular with the ladies. Today, her lips twisted feebly, unsure if the wink was something she should be proud of anymore. When the door to the Hokage's office came into view, Naruto stopped with a frozen look on her face, sensing an extra chakra signature in the room. In that brief moment, she channeled natural energy, and the characteristic orange shading around her eyes appeared and disappeared in seconds. No way. Kakashi-sensei's in there. There's no way I'm dash. Kakashi was the Yondaime student, Shikamaru argued. If anyone knows something, he does, and since he's back in ANBU, you might not get another chance to ask him for a while. Naruto sometimes wished Shikamaru didn't make so much damn sense. Mentally groaning, she pushed open the door to the Hokage's office. Two heads turned toward the trio. "Ah, Naruto," said Tsunade. She wore a worried look that Naruto was just about to question when. "Naruto has something to tell you," said Shikamaru abruptly. "Very well," she said, eyeing the three young men curiously. They were all acting a bit odd. "Kakashi-sensei, can you stay please?" Naruto asked quietly as the Kappinin turned to leave. Now, a quiet, polite Naruto was just not normal, so the silver-haired shinobi took a long look at his student. Without warning, Kakashi leaped between Tsunade and the trio, readying himself in a fighting stance. "Who are you?" he demanded. Two eyes blazed red as the Kappinin activated his twin Sharingan. "Compliments of the late Uchiha Obito." "Hold it," yelled Naruto, waving her hands. "It's really me, Dadabayo." "Yeah. It's troublesome, but this really is Naruto." Sasuke activated his own Sharingan. We are all who we appear to be. The Sharingan could never be copied, and Kakashi was certain it wasn't a genjutsu, which left only one question. Naruto, said Kakashi, why are you in a henge? Heh heh, she grinned uncomfortably, scratching her cheek. That's the question, isn't it? Enough of this, yelled Tsunade. What's going on? Naruto, explain. The door to the Hokage's office opened suddenly. Shusho, gomenasai, said Sakura, eyeing the tense positions of her teammates. I thought Tsunade Shusho was alone. It's alright, Sakura. Naruto was just about to tell us something interesting. Tsunade's tone implied that she expected the interruption to be worth it. I can't, wailed Naruto. Not with Sakura here. Emerald eyes narrowed at the panicked expression on Naruto's face. I'm a part of Team 7, too. Whatever's going on, you will tell me, Uzumaki Naruto. Just get it over with, muttered Shikamaru. No, damn it. Can you call Sai, too? Asked Naruto resignedly. He's also a member of Team 7. Naruto felt more than saw the barely imperceptible shadowing of Sasuke's aura. The two dark-haired shinobis did not get along. When Sasuke had first returned, Naruto had made the mistake of thinking that, since they were so much alike, they might hit it off. How wrong she was. Naruto couldn't remember ever being so uncomfortable at her favorite ramen stand as she was that night. Sai is on a mission, said Tsunade shortly. The chilled atmosphere warmed, and Naruto didn't have to look at Sasuke to know that he was wearing a smirk. The Avenger and Sai had developed a rivalry of sorts but without the undertone of friendship present in Sasuke and Naruto's rivalry. No, the two boys, Sasuke in particular, enjoyed being one-up. Naruto frowned. She would have to go see Sai as soon as he got back, it wasn't right for him to be the only one left out. Naruto. Tsunade slammed a thankfully not chakra-enhanced fist on her brand new desk to get his attention. I have important matters to attend to. Get on with it. Well, the thing is she trailed off. Cammy, just how do you explain something like this? Well, so today is my 18th birthday, right? Right. Did the boy want to ask for a birthday present? Surely he wouldn't be this nervous asking for something so simple. Happy birthday, Naruto. Thanks. Naruto glanced at Sasuke, something not lost on Tsunade or Kakashi. My god, thought Tsunade. His 18th birthday. He is a legal adult now. Does that mean he and the Uchiha? But then, why is Shikamaru here? Yippee! Thought a delighted Kakashi. Now I'll have prime material for my Ika Ika Yaoi edition. Authorship of the series had passed to him after Jiraiya's death at the Toad Sage's express wish. But wait. That doesn't explain the henge. So you know these attacks I've been having? Tsunade and Kakashi straightened, all Eki thoughts suddenly forgotten, while Sakura narrowed her eyes in worry. Well, see, I found this seal on my body. It was created by the Yondaime and off Naruto went with her story. Once she started, she wasn't able to stop, even when the faces of the Hokage and her sensei darkened with worry and anger. She told them how the attacks had been progressing, about her clone's research, when she realized the seal was using natural energy. Tsunade was unable to keep silent any longer. You found a seal on your body that used natural energy for God knows what purpose and you didn't tell anybody. That's what I said, murmured Sasuke, so softly that no one but Shikamaru heard. Naruto. We can't know it was your father's work. We must take you to Dash. It was the Yondaime seal. Geezer Sage said so. Tsunade halted her rant. Fukasakudano was knowledgeable and wise, and more importantly, he had trained her predecessor for some time. If he believed the seal to be the Yondaime's, then it almost certainly was. Ha, she sighed in exasperation. Fine, but we should still take you to see a seal master dash. Today is my 18th birthday, she repeated. The seal had a time limit. It's gone. Tsunade's eyes widened. Then, what was it for? Have you noticed any differences? Ah, yeah. That's just it. Naruto's anxiety was back in full force, and both Tsunade and Kakashi felt it like a physical blow. She hesitated. Just do it, said Sasuke in false boredom. Naruto nodded and lifted her hands to release the henge. So, it looks like I'm a girl, she said with an awkward grin. The Hokage and Kakashi's faces were almost mirror images in their shock. Sakura outright shrieked. Where the vibrant young man they had known for years had stood was a young woman with long blonde hair worn loose at her sides. She was small, shorter than Sakura, but not quite petite. Her face was narrower, her chin less rounded, but her eyes were the same deep cerulean, piercing them with an expression that willed them to believe her. It was Shikamaru's presence that convinced them that they weren't being pranked. He would find it too troublesome, especially on the day after his mission, and he was looking at them steadily, his eyes telling them what his mouth was too lazy to say. My God, breathed Tsunade. And Naruto? Asked Sakura uncertainly, stepping towards the girl. You've always been the #1 most surprising shinobi, said Kakashi with smiling eyes. That's all you have to say, roared the suddenly animated Naruto. Well dash. You were the student of the Yondaime, so you must know something about this. I want an explanation. Said Kakashi, rifling through distant memories, there was a rumor going around that sensei was having a girl. So you knew, she accused hotly. No, Minato-sensei told me that Kushina-san was pregnant and that they had decided to let your gender be a surprise. Then what about this rumor? Just the normal gossip of nosy women. I'm surprised the villagers were told at all, drawled the lazy Shikamaru. Seems like a tactical error, considering the Yondaime's enemies. Well, people tried to keep it quiet, but it's hard to miss when the Hokage's wife is pregnant, especially with Kushina-san escaping her ANBU guards to go for ramen. Kakashi said this a bit sorely, leaving the other shinobis with the distinct impression that he had been one of those guards. Sakura laughed nervously. At least we know where he, she, gets it. Yes, Naruto has always been very much like his, her dash. What else, Hataki? Interrupted Naruto irately. I want to know absolutely everything you know. That would take quite some dash. Kakashi-sensei. Strange how. You could almost say he was broody. Sometimes he would stare off into space, and he had this look on his face, like he was worried or calculating but always determined. I asked Kushina-san about him, and she got this annoyed but half-amused expression. I assumed they'd had another fight. Naruto was alarmed. Did they fight a lot? Not in a bad way, he assured Naruto, trying not to snicker. Well, let's just say that Kushina-san had severe mood swings while she was pregnant. She was something of a terror. It was Tsunade's turn to grin. I was in Minato's office once discussing Mednin training regimen, and Kushina stormed in yelling about paint and good-for-nothing husbands. You should have seen the look in Minato's eyes. Tsunade outright laughed. Seems he had used Hiration to escape her when she was in temper. That girl was good for Minato. Kept him on his toes, she added fondly. That must have been when they were deciding the color for Naruto's room, said Kakashi with a smile. I helped paint it. Normally, Naruto would love hearing stories about her parents, but today, she was on a mission. Anything else? She asked her sensei. Kakashi sobered. After the Kyuubi attack, I asked about you. The Sandaime just handed me your birth certificate. Stillborn female, it said. I didn't think to question it. Of course, when I first saw Naruto years later, I knew he was Sensei's son. I assumed the Sandaime wanted people to believe the child was a girl as additional protection for Naruto. Naruto turned a hopeful gaze to the Hokage, but the older woman shook her head. My predecessor said nothing about this. He left no letter or explanation. The blonde slumped, and her blue eyes turned downwards in growing despair. If she just knew, if there were some logical explanation for this madness, then maybe, just maybe, she would be able to accept this life-altering change. Sensing her mood, Kakashi stepped towards the downcast girl and lifted her chin with his hand. Serious dark eyes studied the face of their student. You look even more like Minato-sensei now, he commented softly. As a boy, you had your mother's features, but these are definitely sensei's chin and nose. So you're saying I look like a boy? She tried to laugh. How ironic. Not at all. In fact, you are quite pretty. Naruto flushed, not quite sure how to feel about the compliment. As a boy, Naruto's first instinct would have been to slap away Kakashi's hand and exclaim angrily. But Naruto was a girl now, so she should be happy not to be ugly. Right? Kami, what exactly was she supposed to feel anymore? Though I'm guessing you still have your mother's personality. Kakashi added. Naruto's lips turned upwards in a small smile. Damn right, I do. Databayo. Then it's nice to meet you, Naruto-chan. Kakashi ruffled her hair and stepped away with smiling eyes, satisfied that his student would adapt in time. The files, Shikamaru reminded Naruto with a pointed cough. Right, the files, she exclaimed, suddenly excited again. Oba-chan, can we see any super secret stuff that the Yondaime wrote? Or that Aji-san wrote after I was born? There might be something dash. Naruto, I have read everything, and I do mean everything, to do with you and the Kyuubi all the way back to the Shodai Hokage's notes about his wife, my grandmother, when she was the Jinchuriki. I promise you that there isn't the slightest mention of any possible Kyuubi-related reason for the Yondaime to turn you into a boy. Except dash, her brows knitted in concentration, the only time the seal would be weakened is during childbirth, but he gave the seal a time limit. He can't possibly have thought you would give birth before you were 18 dash, she trailed off in renewed confusion. Kakashi agreed, that doesn't make sense, and it doesn't sound like something sensei would do. Then I'm back to square one. With nothing, absolutely nothing. Naruto agitatedly tugged on her long hair while the other shinobis watched, wishing they could give her an explanation. Sakura tried to distract her. So, Naruto. Why is your hair long? 5 pairs of eyes stared at the pink-haired shinobi. What? I'm curious. I don't see why her hair would suddenly grow dash. Probably because it was living seal, said Naruto, receiving blank looks in response. Only Kakashi and Tsunade knew what she meant. A living seal takes into account the caster's will and modifies stuff based on that will. Most seals have just one use, like storing weapons or something, but a living seal can change over time according to the caster's intention. I'll bet the seal's final act was to use natural energy to make my hair grow. Just another small transformation. Naruto gave her hair a long look. My dad loved my mom's hair. Maybe he thought mine would be pretty, too. My parents dash, she mused softly before suddenly yelling, damn it. I met them. My own freaking parents didn't tell me when I met them. How would you have reacted if someone you'd never met before claimed to be your mother or father then told you that you were a girl? Sakura reasoned. I would think they were insane. Exactly, and then you would probably attack them. Your parents had things to say to you and a limited time to do it. Of course, they wouldn't waste time telling you about this. Naruto muttered darkly, hardly a waste of time. Tsunade cleared her throat. I think we have to assume that the seal was merely another method of protecting you. Unless he had some personal reason dash, she paused and considered her words. Personal, she mused. What is it, Oba-chan? The slug princess glanced over the shinobis before her sharp gaze settled on the Uchiha. It's not an S-rank secret or anything, just something I'd prefer the Uchiha didn't, know. Damn it. I said I'd trust him. Even in light of recent events. There is a room that few people, only some council members and elite shinobi, know about. We call it the hovel. Doesn't sound like much, noted Shikamaru dryly. It contains many personal items, such as high-level jutsu scrolls and specialized weapons, of the previous Hokages. Items too precious or dangerous to be entrusted to rank shinobis. She smiled at how round Naruto's eyes had become, as though she'd struck gold. The monkey summoning scroll, which I have to remember to give to Konohamaru soon, and the adamantine staff are two of the Sandame's possessions that he left in the care of his successor. The Yondame had a stash as well, just a small one, mind you. Don't get too hopeful, but who knows? It's possible there will be an explanation there. Naruto wore a dreamlike expression, just imagining the awesome jutsus her dad must have left. Well, what are we waiting for? We aren't going anywhere. You will proceed to the hospital dash. What? No way. Not when dash. The hovel is enclosed in a powerful seal created by the Shodai and perfected by the Yondame. Anyone without the Hokage markings dash, Tsunade patted her shoulder, will be burnt to a crisp, sliced to ribbons, electrocuted, drowned, and buried under 10 tons of rock. All at once. Silence was a beautiful thing. As usual, Naruto was the first to break it. Still better than the hospital. I can't go there. Those Mednines will sense the henge dash. It's not like you can hide it forever, said Sakura, who was finally wrapping her mind around Naruto's gender bender and coming to accept it. Naruto was about to retort when an awestruck expression crossed her face. Why didn't I think of it before? I can recreate the seal. Turn myself back into a boy. Absolutely not, ordered the Hokage, silencing Naruto's protests with a glare. Even if you manage to figure out how to make the seal, the fact is that you are a girl. Remaining as a boy any longer might have some negative effect on your health, and on that note, how are you feeling? Any strange aches or pains? It's only been a few hours since I woke up, but no, I feel fine. Great even, except for this extra weight on my dash. Shikamaru cleared his throat. Naruto rolled her eyes. Sakura took a better look at Naruto's chest and was shocked and mildly displeased to see that it was larger than her own. Sakura, I want you to get another blood sample and cheek swab from Naruto. Did you freeze the cells from a week ago? Hi, Shursho. Genotype both samples. What's all this for, Oba-chan? I want to know if the seal altered your very DNA or merely your outward appearance. During development, girls and boys release different enzymes and hormones that direct the body's growth and also influence the mental state. In your case, you had every reason to believe you were a boy, so your conscious mind adopted the mannerisms and socially accepted roles of a boy. However, it's quite possible that your DNA and hormone levels were those of a girl, and thus your subconscious processes were always female. For your sake, I hope it's the latter. It will make your transition that much easier, but regardless, from a medical perspective, you are a fascinating case. Naruto's skin had taken on a sickly sheen. You sound like Orochimaru, she mumbled. Tsunade blanched. Ah, gomenasai, Oba-chan, Naruto apologized hurriedly, though she thought the Hokage's reaction a bit extreme. I don't really think you're like the snake bastard. For a long moment, the Godame looked like she wanted to say something, as though it were on the tip of her tongue and only indecision held it back. Blue eyes narrowed. Oba-chan was never one to hesitate. What's going on? Naruto demanded. Is it whatever Kakashi-sensei was telling you before we came? I know it was. I could feel dash. Orochimaru is alive. Naruto stopped cold, and Sasuke's neutral expression deepened into a frown. Sakura gasped. Shikamaru catalogued the information away as though it were a rather foul move on the shogi board. Naruto began, I thought we killed him. After we took down Madara, the Alliance went after him. It might be impossible to kill him entirely, Sasuke interrupted. The cursed seal of heaven implants bits of his chakra into anyone who survives its application. All it would take is a shinobi who knew about the seal to revive. As you did last time, Tsunade interrupted. Sasuke clenched his jaw and nodded. The Hokage gave him a hard look. It seems that we didn't kill him in the slightest after the war. The Raikage believes we were fooled by a clever clone. Probably a snake that he genetically altered with his own DNA. Orochimaru is sure to attack Konoha. We will depend on your knowledge, Uchiha. He nodded and said stiffly, I have held nothing back. Tsunade's cold stare softened imperceptibly. Be that as it may, I'm afraid you will fall under further suspicion. You must remain within the borders of Konoha until. That's not fair, yelled Naruto, unable to keep quiet. He even killed. Naruto, yelled Tsunade, slamming her fist on her new desk. Do not let friendship blind you to the facts. Uchiha Sasuke abandoned his village and his friends to ally with Orochimaru. True, he killed the snake, but months later, Uchiha revived him and allied with him once again. For a brief period of time, she added. A really brief period, shouted an enraged Naruto. The rest of the shinobi world will see it without your bias, and the situation gets worse. Worse? Tsunade exhaled forcefully. Orochimaru has the Rinnegan. So yeah, I'm a girl. I have boobs, and I can't go after the stupid snake because we don't bloody know where he is. That evening, Naruto stood before the toads of Mount Myaboku, whose expressions varied from outright shock to amusement, and told her tale beginning from the moment she had left them the previous day. Gamabunta's pipe had actually fallen from his mouth, but Geezer Sage was hiding a smile behind one of his flippers. Oh, and now everyone's going to hate Sasuke again because the stupid snake has the stupid Rinnegan, which as everyone knows is the final form of the stupid Sharingan, so of course Orikima fucking Ryu must have had help from a stupid Uchiha to get it. Naruto's sides heaved. Said Gamabunta uncertainly, maybe we should pass on the drinking until . No way, snapped Naruto, blue eyes flashing, never in my life have I wanted to get more wasted than right now. Bring on the sake. Next chapter. Unfortunate encounter. Headache. Naruto never knew a true headache until that moment. It was horrible, a fuzzy and simultaneous stabbing sensation as though someone were suffocating her brain with a kunai-lined pillow. All she wanted to do was sink back into the blissful darkness of sleep, but the more she tried to force herself to sleep, the more quickly she awakened. Naruto shifted and felt the grassy floor beneath her. Upon opening her eyes, the colors of Mount Myaboku blurred together in an swirling cacophony of awfulness. Naruto moaned, and moments later, a large orange toad hopped into her field of vision. Never before had Naruto wished that orange weren't so bright, but at the moment, she was all set to wish the color out of existence. Wooter, she whispered hoarsely. Moments later, the lip of a wooden cup was pressed to her mouth. Naruto sucked eagerly on the liquid, but her mouth was so dry she could barely swallow. She ended up choking and spitting out more water than she managed to drink. Kami, this headache is awful. Fuzzball, why aren't you healing me? Kurama. When she received no response, Naruto entered her mindscape and found that her incorporeal body felt the effects of the alcohol much less strongly. She could even move without wanting to kill herself, and move she did. What was once a sewer-like basement was now a forest, and instead of having to slosh through water, Naruto trod on a grassy floor. She walked through the forest to the lake where the demon fox liked to sleep. Sure enough, there he was, curled into a ball with his head resting on his paws. Kurama. One large red opened and tried to focus on Naruto. I'm going to kill you, he said shortly, but his words were somehow muddled. How come? The Kyuubi tried to stand up to swipe an angry paw at Naruto, but the fox teetered on its legs and fell over. In resignation, Kurama closed his eyes and curled up miserably. Alcohol affects your chakra coils, and by extension, me, as well. No way. You got trashed, too. Naruto would have laughed until her sides hurt, but even the thought of laughing made her head pound. I was challenged and insulted in the same sentence. I refused to be beaten by an ill-mannered toad. Kurama said the last word as though it were a piece of scum stuck to his paw. And you were quite eager yourself, so eager that you started pouring the drinks once Gamabunta became too unsteady. You, Naruto, are what they call a guzzler. Jeez. That bad, huh? Why didn't you tell me to stop? I tried. Your response was, Kobakurama no baka baka ba akakea. Don't be such a baka baby fox. When you weren't yelling about your breasts or lack of other parts, your favorite words were, baka, snake shit, and, uchiha fuckers. I've got a very dirty drunk mouth, don't I? Try as she might, Naruto couldn't remember anything after Gamabunta had toppled over. Indeed, and now I've got this monstrous headache. I'm going back to sleep. When I awaken, I will teach you the consequences of pissing off the greatest of the 9 bijou. Naruto pulled out of her mindscape before Kurama could come up with more creative threats. She was thankful that the demon fox would have to stop short of killing her, but if Kurama had as bad a headache as Naruto, then she deserved whatever punishment the fox meted out. You all right, Naruto? Asked Gamakichi when he saw her eyes open again. I feel like crap. Yeah, I kinda expected you to sleep all day, but I guess you've got the fox to help out. Man, Pop'll be ticked when he wakes up with you already up and gone. He should know never to challenge a Jinchuriki. The only, absolutely only, good thing about this morning was emerging from her first drinking bash victorious. She would brag about it once the world stopped spinning. Can I have some more water? She asked blearily. Gamakichi lifted the same wooden cup to her lips. Strange. The water was refreshing but at the same time, wrong. It tasted weird. Well, her whole mouth felt funny, so it shouldn't come as a surprise that her sense of taste was off. As long as ramen stayed the same, everything else would be fine. Glancing around to see just where she was lying, Naruto noticed a peculiar change in the landscape. Off to the right, there was a large patch of crushed giant mushrooms and broken leaves. What happened over there? You happened, Gamakichi replied shortly. Fukasakuaji-san is pissed but mostly at Pops, not you. Serves him right, she said in an unforgiving mood. He wouldn't stop pouring me drinks. Which you kept drinking. Naruto massaged her brow in an attempt to stave off the headache. Yeah, I had a lot on my mind. How does Oba-chan do this every day? Gamakichi snorted, even she could never drink as much as you did last night, and you outdid 3 of the great toads. Naruto twisted her lips into a semblance of a grin. Where is everybody? They're sleeping. You kept every toad on the mountain awake with your god-awful singing. Excuse me, serenading. You kept insisting that you weren't singing, you were serenading us to sleep, and you wouldn't stop no matter how much we told you to shut up. What did I sing? She asked, morbidly curious. Something about snake shit and uchiha fuckers. Don't tell M-Pop I repeated those words. Once he could hop again, he'd have my froggy behind doing hopping jacks for the rest of my life. Your secret is safe with me, said Naruto, closing her eyes and wishing for the ever-elusive world of dreams and oblivion. Said Gamakichi, seeing that she was about to go back to sleep, I'm supposed to take you back when you wake up, and you're awake, so dash. That means I have to move, she groaned. Even lying still, it felt like the world was spinning, but she didn't protest when Gamakichi extended his long, pink tongue. Warm and moist, the tongue wrapped around Naruto firmly, lifted her off the ground, and drew her towards Gamakichi's open mouth. Bleh, she thought, grimacing, I thought I'd gotten used to this. It wasn't like the toad was slobbery or anything, but still, it made her feel a little queasy. Oh wait, that was nausea from her hangover. She was stored in the glorious darkness of Gamakichi's mouth when Naruto muttered, "Stomach feels weird. Ipoo vomit in my boof, I will bleak out contract." His voice sounded garbled since he was speaking with a human on his tongue. While Naruto turned her thoughts away from the tightness in her stomach, the giant toad hopped with his passenger to the portal well connected to Konoha and roused one of the grumpy messenger toads. The much smaller green toad disappeared down the well while Naruto contemplated just how upset Gamakichi would be if she did, in fact, lose control of her stomach. Thankfully, only a few minutes later, Naruto felt the familiar tug on her body, not an unpleasant pull, just a strange feeling around her navel, that signified she was pulled into a space-time jutsu. Then, Gamakichi's loud voice sounded in Naruto's ears. The Uchiha is here, and he looks angry." Naruto groaned as Gamakichi opened his mouth and extended his tongue with her wrapped in it. Dreading the bright light that would hit her eyes and intensify her headache, Naruto waited several long moments before opening her eyes. When she did, they fell upon the dark-haired shinobi, and Naruto realized that Gamakichi was wrong. Sasuke wasn't angry. Sasuke was livid. "Where have you been?" he hissed. Naruto struggled to stand while she looked longingly at her apartment complex, imagining her bed inside of it. Team, it seems pretty obvious. Are you out of your mind? Could you not speak so loudly, whispered Naruto hoarsely, covering her ears as she leaned against Gamakichi for support. You have been missing for more than 20 hours. Sure enough, the sun was high in the sky. It was afternoon in Konoha. Geez, team, were you so worried about me that Che, he scoffed derisively. More like I didn't want to answer a bunch of stupid questions from the interrogation squad. I was the last to see you, you know. They suspected me of knocking you out and shipping you off to see Orochimaru. Naruto paused. Those would be stupid questions seeing as how there's no way in hell you could beat me. Sasuke would have retorted angrily, but an ANBU wearing a bird mask appeared before them in a whirlwind of leaves. Biting his tongue to keep from shouting at the infuriating blonde, Sasuke turned to the ANBU and said, "Inform Hokage-sama that Uzumaki Naruto is safe." Very well. Hokage-sama will expect to see Naruto-sama in an hour, Bird said, taking in Naruto's hungover appearance. You should clean her up first. The ANBU vanished before Sasuke could protest. Why was it his job? Gamakichi cleared his throat, well then, I guess I'll leave you with the Uchiha. Bye-bye, Naruto. He disappeared in a poof, and with the sudden loss of support, Naruto fell to the ground, cursing every giant toad she had ever met. Sasuke eyed the miserable blonde who lay where she'd fallen groaning and making no attempt to stand. Get up, Sasuke ordered without pity. Can't, came the muffled response. The Hokage expects you in 1 hour. Wanna sleep? And drink water. Lots of water. No time. Sasuke nudged her with his foot. Naruto only groaned in irritation. Sasuke nudged harder to no avail. With a dear god why me sigh, Sasuke bent down and pulled Naruto's face towards him. He would put the girl under a genjutsu, just a small one. Enough to make her forget that she was hungover. Enough to get her moving without resistance. When Naruto's face was directly in front of his, he waited for her eyes to open, and they did, slowly and miserably. So miserably, in fact, that she looked almost sick. Her face was pinched tightly, and she was clutching her stomach as though she might. Naruto belched. Loudly. Sasuke's face contorted in disgust, which soon morphed into murderous fury. Oh, Naruto said in surprise, that tightness in my stomach was just, ack. Sasuke grabbed the blonde by her orange jacket and, barely taking aim, threw her towards the open window of her apartment. She sailed through it and hit her bedroom wall with a thud. Following her trajectory, Sasuke leaped into Naruto's room and found the girl crumpled in a disoriented heap on the floor. Team, I'm gonna kill you for that, once I can stand. But that would have to wait because Naruto was crawling slowly to her bed. Sleep. She must have sleep. And peace and quiet. And darkness. Kami, she wished it were nighttime. Naruto had only just made it to her bed when she felt herself lifted off the floor. Sasuke was carrying her, not princess style, but holding her away from his body as far as he could manage. Naruto knew it was pointless to fight him in her current state, so she gathered her hungover wits to get her revenge in a different way. When Sasuke had grabbed her the first time, more than her jacket had been rearranged. "URG," she said, tugging at the material on her chest and making an exaggerated show of it. "This stupid bra Sakura gave me itches, and it's too small." When I told her that, her face twitched. I bet she would have punched me through a wall if she weren't worried about my health. I really can't help it, you know. It's not my fault that my boobs are so much bigger. In response to the blonde's jabbering, Sasuke dropped Naruto fully clothed into the shower and turned on the icy cold water. Yikes! Damn you, team! Inwardly, she was laughing at the expression on Sasuke's face. It was a pale, pinched look as though he were trying to ignore her, be angry, and not blush all at once. "It's your own damn fault." Sasuke slammed the bathroom door on his way out. He had every right to be angry. That burp was disgusting, and Sasuke had gotten a face full of it. Plus, he hadn't slept in more than 48 hours, courtesy of an idiotic boy-turned-girl who disappeared for hours on end to get wasted with toads. Even worse was Sasuke's reaction to her disappearance. There wasn't a leaf in Konoha he hadn't overturned in his search for her, and when he'd alerted the Hokage, her eyes had mirrored Sasuke's fear, the fear that Orochimaru had spirited the young Jinchuriki away. If he had the Rinnegan, it stood to reason he might seek to control the Bijou as Madara had done only 2 years before. Tsunade had called for the best tracker ANBUs who pinpointed Naruto's last known location to her apartment. Then there was no trace of her. As it was highly unlikely that even Orochimaru could kidnap the Jinchuriki so stealthily, the prevailing theory was that Naruto had, in fact, been reverse summoned by the toads, but when Tsunade tried to contact them, her message was never answered. They were probably all dead drunk by that point, growled Sasuke inwardly. Since they had no proof of foul play and no trail to follow, they chose to go with protocol and wait the requisite 48 hours before declaring her missing. It had been a long and restless night for Sasuke, and the following morning was worse when there was still no sign of the blonde. Then, when he had seen the small, green toad hopping toward Naruto's apartment and when Naruto herself had appeared, the relief he had felt was overwhelming. So much so that he had masked his relief with anger. In many ways, it was a much easier emotion to deal with. With these thoughts running through his mind, Sasuke threw some clothes in the bathroom. "Put these on once you're done. I swear if you come out of there undressed, I will electrocute you." He might do it anyways. Once she'd gotten over the shock of cold water, Naruto lay in the shower, letting the water spray down on her. When she opened her mouth, the water pooled in it and ran down the sides of her cheeks, soothing the stinging dryness. For some time, she marinated in the cool relief the water brought. She might have even fallen asleep, but far too quickly. A loud knock sounded on the bathroom door. "You've been in there more than half an hour. Get out. Stupid team." She only wanted a few more minutes. Sasuke banged on the door loudly, which did not help Naruto's headache. "All right already," she complained, loud enough for Sasuke to hear. The banging ceased, and Naruto turned off the water. The sooner she saw Tsunade, the sooner she could come back here to sleep. Minutes later, Naruto stepped out of the bathroom, fully dressed in a black shirt and baggy orange pants. Something inside Sasuke lurched unexpectedly. Her normally sunshine hair was dark and mussed from the shower. It hung wet at her sides, water droplets slipping off the long strands one by one. Her lids were heavy, but the startling blue of her eyes peeked out from under them. The too large clothes made her appear smaller by comparison, and as she rubbed her sleepy eyes, a yawn broke from her mouth. Wet and sleepy as she was, something about Naruto was unbearably cute. With a start, Sasuke jerked himself from the inexplicable reverie. To distract himself, he snapped at the blonde, "Do something with all this hair." Instead, Naruto walked to her bed and flopped on it. "Too tired." "You do it." She was pouting. Naruto was pouting. Did she purposefully poke out her lower lip, knowing that it made Sasuke want to? What the hell? He roared at himself, stopping that thought in its tracks. With a furious swipe of his hand, Sasuke grabbed trip cord from his weapons pouch on his pants. He moved towards Naruto with decisive steps, determined to banish whatever strange impulse had polluted his mind. After cutting a short length of the cord with a kunai, he reached for her hair and bundled it tightly in his fist. He wrapped the wire around her hair and tied it in an intricate knot that Naruto would find impossible to untie. He flipped her prone body and did the same to the other side. There. He surveyed his work. They were crooked and messy, but they were ponytails. And he had no desire to continue stroking her hair. That was just some random, one-time phenomenon. He had proven it to himself. With a satisfied nod, he reached for the mattress of Naruto's bed and flipped it, throwing Naruto with a howl to the floor. "Get up," Sasuke said brusquely. "It's time to see the Hokage." Tsunade's sucker punched the blonde, and Naruto flew backwards into the wall of the office, at the approval of Sasuke, Sakura, and Kakashi. Naruto groaned, "That's twice in one day." What exactly made them want to throw the hungover girl into a wall? Did they enjoy seeing her in pain? Were they sadists? "The next time you disappear," said Tsunade firmly, "I will sentence you to 3 months of D-rank missions." Yep. Sadists. "I was with the Toads," protested Naruto weakly from the floor. "Can't a girl get drunk with her summons without retribution? Yet you failed to mention that you, our Jinchuriki and future Hokage, would be away for an extended period of time while a powerful enemy of Konoha was on the loose." Gomenasai, said Naruto more humbly. "I thought I mentioned it once a while back." And then she had completely forgotten to tell anyone yesterday. In her defense, there had been plenty else to occupy her mind. Don't let it happen again. Once Tsunade was convinced that Naruto was properly castigated, she smirked. "So how was it?" "You look like hell." "I beat Gamabunta. But he said I was cheating, what with Kyuubi and all speeding up my metabolism or whatever." "I still beat him, though, and Gamaken who passed out, ungracefully, first and Gamahiro who might have beat Bunta if Bunta hadn't whacked him over the head with his pipe. Seems me and Bunta got into a fight after that and did some remodeling. I don't whether to be horrified or proud of you. Either way, here's your birthday present from me." Tsunade reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a clear bottle of nasty-looking green goop. "Ah, what's that, Oba-chan?" she asked uneasily. "This is my secret to success. It's the ultimate hangover remedy." "Does it taste as awful as it looks?" "Yes, but the bad taste goes away more quickly than your headache." "Good point." "Well," Naruto said, taking the vile concoction, bottoms up. She gagged only once before swallowing the entire contents of the bottle. "Gah. Bleh. Geez, how do you make something this awful? Your words are already less muddled." "It's amazingly effective, isn't it?" The room came into focus as her headache dimmed. Naruto suddenly realized that she had been leaning on the desk for support and straightened. "Wow, this stuff's amazing." "Of course it is." "I made it," said Tsunade. "Sake and this remedy help me get through all the damn paperwork, and when I go out drinking with the council members, they never can figure out how I'm back to normal the next day. Oh, how I love seeing them with god-awful hangovers." While Tsunade laughed, the other shinobis eyed her uncertainly, and Naruto learned another effective method for dealing with the council. After Tsunade quieted, she said, maybe we can have a match next time, Naruto. Wouldn't that be something? To beat the Kyuubi would be quite the feather in her cap. As long as I get more of that stuff Naruto indicated the hangover remedy, then you're on. Tsunade smiled in challenge. I look forward to it. Ahem, coughed Sakura indiscreetly. Shursho, didn't you have a reason for calling Naruto here? Of course. Naruto, said Tsunade, suddenly businesslike, I went through your father's possessions in the hovel last night and she picked up a book on her desk, I found something that might interest you. It appears to be a journal. Naruto's ready grin had slipped back into place as soon as she drank Tsunade's remedy. But now, the grin faltered as her attention riveted on the journal. With a trembling hand, Naruto reached out and took the little book. The cover was a cool leather that was dyed dark green. A single leaf was etched into its spine, marking the journal as, made in Konoha. Naruto imagined that many such journals could be found in the market, but this one was special. She held the journal as though it were a sacred artifact. Her father's journal. Her father's thoughts and memories in her hands. A quivering thumb reached around the cover to open the moment she applied pressure, inked lines appeared, seeming to draw themselves on the dark green leather. The lines connected and formed a defined figure. It was no ordinary picture. It was a seal. Tsunade nodded at the journal. I called Kakashi here to take a look at that seal, but he couldn't figure out how to unlock it. You'll have to take it to the intelligence division. Ask for the seal specialist named Hideki. Naruto barely listened to Tsunade's instructions. Her sole focus was the little book in her hands. Glowing a soft blue, the seal was made of 4 whirlpools, one in each corner, surrounding a central pentagram. Studying the seal carefully, Naruto traced the outline of the pentagram, a 5-pointed star enclosed by a circle. Ordinarily, it would signify the 5 elements were used in the seal, so ordinarily, it would take the 5 elements to undo the seal. Her gaze moved to the whirlpools. They were her father's signature according to Geezer Sage, but in this case. Tsunade was still speaking. Is one of the Yondaime seals, of course, so it may be several days, even weeks, before it's cracked. Tell Hideki to make this a top priority. No need for that, Naruto murmured absent-mindedly. She raised one finger, which lit with blue chakra, and placed it on the top right point of the star, the traditional location for wind. With a small smile, Naruto glanced again at the whirlpools. Clockwise, it would be. The points of the star rotated as Naruto dragged her finger around the circle. Grinning in triumph, she gave a final quick swipe of her finger. The star kept spinning faster and faster until... click. The seal unlocked. Naruto barely noticed the Hokage's jaw dropping in surprise. Kakashi had managed to keep his mouth closed, but his eyes bugged. Staring at the now open journal, Kakashi stammered, How did you do that? Oh, the whirlpools each ended in a different place. See? Naruto pointed to the 4 whirlpools. That's kinda weird if the whirlpools were there as only a signature. But if you draw a straight line from the center of each whirlpool to its end and mentally extend the line across the cover, then the 4 lines intersect at the location on the pentagram for wind. So you put your elemental chakra into dash. No, just normal chakra. What? The pentagram signifies elemental chakra. That was a feint. The first key was wind's position on the pentagram, but if I had used the wind element, I bet I would have triggered another seal as a defensive mechanism. How could know that? Kakashi demanded. And you knew that you had to spin it, as well. How? Naruto tilted her head in thought. I guess it was more instinct than anything else. Usually, with a lock and key seal like this you base your seals off of something you know. Something you're familiar with, so you will never forget how to unlock them. My father's signature jutsu, the Rasengan, is the most advanced shape manipulation jutsu that exists, but he was never able to combine it with an element. Naruto shrugged, so I didn't add elemental chakra. The second and final key was dash. She mimicked the tracing of the circle, rotation. Tsunade studied the seal once more. But, she protested, the whirlpools spin counterclockwise, and you definitely turned the pentagram clockwise, so dash. That was the second trick. Rasengan is created when multiple chakra currents are forced in opposing directions. So I spun the star in the opposite direction of the whirlpools. Naruto nodded in satisfaction. 2 keys and 2 feints, a 4-layered seal. Not bad for the old man, but he was no match for an Uzumaki. Ha ha ha. Naruto put her hands on her hips and laughed in triumph while the other shinobis watched her in amazement. Contrary to popular belief, Naruto had never been an idiot.